All right, guys, President Donald Trump has been facing backlash after tweeting comments telling Representatives Ayanna Pressley, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar to go back to the countries from which they came after the Congresswoman spoke out against the conditions of border detention facilities.
Trump's tweets attacking the reps have hit home for some People staff members. People Entertainment Project editor Mary Green and staff writer Elaine Aridias both wrote personal essays about his comments, and they join us now. Welcome. Thank you for being here, ladies. Mary, you were adopted from Korea as an infant, taken into a home in Iowa, 5 siblings, Catholic home, and you actually had a staph infection at the time, and you credit moving to America as, helping save you. So what treatments were you able to receive here that you weren't in Korea?
Yes, absolutely. I was so sick, and because I was an orphan, at the time there were thousands of orphans. So I was on, it was public aid. The conditions, especially being an orphan, weren't very good. But when I flew here, I flew to the Midwest, and my parents were able to take me to the Mayo Clinic. So I went from no medical care to the very best in the entire world.
Yeah.
And the doctor actually told my parents that had I stayed in Seoul in South Korea for 2 more weeks, I would not have made it.
Yeah, so when you were both growing up, you experienced people judging you, people saying things like, go back to where you came from, which is why this whole conversation has been sparked. It brings up these old feelings. Talk to me about that, how that made you feel as a child, what it kind of meant to you as you have heard that back in the dialogue again.
Well, the first time I remember it, I was only 5 years old, and I remember being shocked, but I could tell by how angry and how mean the kids were being, and because they were throwing rocks and calling me all kinds of racial slurs, that it was meant to hurt my feelings, and it did. I was 5, and so I remember racing inside and just dissolving into a puddle of tears. Immediately, it just felt like the wind was knocked out of me, and that's because when it happens to you and you're young, you internalize it, and it becomes one of these things that can be said at any time. You're incredibly vulnerable to it. So when I read it, it just initially took me back to that place that I felt so many times earlier in my life. And then, of course, I got angry about it.
And how about for you?
It was shocking. I expect it from, uneducated people or people that haven't been around the world or met different types of people. But when you see it coming from the White House, it's hurtful and shocking, and you go through all the range of emotions.
Yeah,
it brings a lot of horrible memories that you had as a kid too.
What kinds of, I guess, what do you think the lesson is? How do we move forward as a nation in terms of rhetoric? I mean, we've talked about this a lot with other guests that we've had recently. The political rhetoric here from many people is so volatile at this point, and so visceral and angry and hurtful. How do you think we move forward, and how is this a lesson?
Well, I think in a way it does reflect both sides, that we're so busy screaming at each other that in a way to say go back, it's that we don't even want to listen to each other anymore. And I think one of the reasons that we were talking about that we wrote what we wrote was to simply encourage dialogue, that we're all Americans, and hopefully instead of shouting at each other, to simply hear each other's pain and grievance.
Other people out there, they're going through similar things, similar bullying, facing similar situations. What are your words of encouragement for them?
My suggestion, my mom would say, hold your head up high. And so when people are mean, I just want people to be kind. And I think if someone is being mean to you, it's sort of, you go back to elementary school. You just ignore them, and they're angry for a reason that has nothing to do with you. And so it's going to affect you forever, but you just use that to be better and just be kinder.
Mary, how about for you?
Something very similar in that, yes, acknowledge at how much those words can hurt or the actions can hurt, but you can live through it. All kinds of people walking throughout the world have experienced things like this, and you'll survive it and come out better.
Yeah. Well, Mary and Elaine, thank you for sharing your stories. Very brave of you to come out and speak on these things. To read their personal essays, head to people.com or pick up a copy of People. It's on newsstands now.